Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. So I'm finally settling in from my trip, and I have a lot to go over. I was looking at my notes and listening to some of the audio recordings, and boy, I have a lot of work to do this weekend, folks. A lot of work. And it's all been worth it though, because I have a much clearer picture of what was occurring down in Santa Fe, and a much clearer picture of exactly what the Zorro Ranch was, where it was located, why it was there, and the bigger picture has really come into focus for me down there. And it's obvious, very obvious, that Jeffrey Epstein chose that location for a reason, and it's very obvious why he chose New Mexico. There's a lot of places that are desolate, like New Mexico in America and the Southwest, right? There's several places. He could have chose a place in Nevada, but the real reason he chose New Mexico is because he had an in with the politicians there, and he was able to get preferential treatment the same way he was able in the Virgin Islands. And those two situations, they parallel each other a lot to me. The Virgin Islands and New Mexico, both secluded hideaways, both places where his guests could come and they thought they'd have some privacy, and places where they aren't really in the public eye. Like, there's nobody. How many paparazzi are running around Stanley, New Mexico? How many paparazzi are on his private island, right? Whereas in New York, in the townhouse, as we saw with him walking around with Andrew, there could be paparazzi around any corner taking pictures, and he saw how bad that ended up with for Andrew, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not the situation, it's not the optimal situation for these guys who are looking for privacy. But you switch over to New Mexico, oh, and you have privacy in abundance. And a lot of these people in these, in a town like that, in Stanley or whatever, probably wouldn't even know who some of these, scientists are, and it's stuff like that. So it was the perfect place for Epstein to set up shop. And once I laid eyes on it, and on the drive there especially, I knew exactly why he chose that location. It was it was one of those places where it's like impossible to get away from if you don't have a vehicle, especially in the winter. Like I was saying yesterday, it was 10 degrees out there when I woke up in the morning. 10 degrees. That's absolutely freezing. Even geared up, that's cold. So I can't imagine, we saw the pictures of Virginia Roberts out there in the winter, right, at Zorro Ranch, and with all the snow, et cetera, et cetera. Now, think about that, and then think about a 50-mile radius at every direction at least, where there's maybe only 4 or 5 other residents around your huge property. And that's basically the Jeffrey Epstein Ranch. The layout was just massive and huge, and he had privacy like you would not believe on that ranch, folks. But it was a crazy trip. I'm very glad that I was able to do it. I'm very glad I was able to speak to the sources I was able to speak to, and I am super happy that I was able to share it all with you. So, like I said, over the weekend, I'm going to compile everything, put it all together, and then Sunday or Monday, we're going to do a bonanza show where we have, I go over everything point by point. We'll start at the very beginning, like a timeline of the trip, and I'll break down every single thing that I did, because I feel like you folks deserve to know that as well. I know you're all curious, and that's another reason I went there. I happened to be, within striking distance of Stanley here in Vegas, so I felt it was my responsibility almost to get down there and have a look for everybody who's been supporting the show for so long, and obviously for the survivors themselves, because if we all continue to dig and we all continue to put things together, eventually there is going to be an absolute roadmap for how to bring these folks down, because they can only avoid justice for so long. They can only avoid justice until somebody in the Justice Department steps up and says enough is enough. And I don't just mean in America. This guy was active all over the world. Somebody else can jump up as well. So I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know who eventually is going to slam the hammer down on these people. But until that day comes, we're going to keep compiling whatever sort of evidence we can here, and we're going to keep following the breadcrumbs. We're just going to keep at it, and every day it's just a long, slow grind. And no plans of letting up yet, ever, to be honest with you. Until we get to a conclusion in this case, we're going to be here every single day. We will be here every day discussing this case and discussing how the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein not only got mistreated by Epstein, but how they've also been mistreated by the corrupt government who is supposedly there to protect us. All right, the article I'm going to read today is from the New York Post, and it was written by Ben Furherd. Cool name. Headline: Jeffrey Epstein accuser claims he killed himself to avoid paying victims. So this is an interesting take from one of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers. So let's see what the article has to say. A Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking victim, survivor, who claimed she was forced to marry one of his associates, says the multimillionaire perv committed suicide to escape paying the women he preyed on, according to a new court filing. Honestly, I don't put anything out of the realm of possibility, right? I don't put anything out of the realm of possibility in this Jeffrey Epstein case because we just don't have all of the answers. Everything's pure speculation when it comes to how he passed away. When you have someone like Michael Baden saying one thing, and then you have the medical examiner saying another, and then the evidence totally landing somewhere else, all you can do is speculate. So I don't blame the woman who was identified as Katlyn Doe for having this theory. This is a very plausible theory as well. I mean, look, Jeffrey Epstein was a spiteful, disgusting human being, and he would not want to pay these women even in death. We know that trying to pry even one little single dime from this guy is a hassle, considering the way he set these trusts up, where he set them up. Everything was very well thought out. And while I don't put it past Epstein, I certainly don't put it past his handlers either to make the declaration, to tell him, look, this is what you're going to do. You're going to kill yourself after you do all of this paperwork, and that's the deal, because you've become too much of a toxic asset for us. Now, do I have evidence of that? No, I don't, but that's just a theory as well. Just like Mrs. Doe here saying that he might have killed himself so he didn't have to pay. Again, we're all dealing with speculation at this point. We really don't know what happened in that jail cell. Barr, in his infinite wisdom, has went completely quiet on the whole entire issue. So as soon as Barr gets to doing his job again, maybe we'll get some answers. But until then, it's totally speculation what happened in that cell, and her theory is certainly plausible. The woman, identified as Katlyn Doe, claims a number of actions taken by Epstein prior to his August 2019 alleged suicide at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan show he likely killed himself specifically to avoid shelling out to his victims. Again, I don't put it past Jeffrey Epstein, right? And everything was very calculated. And it's very fishy that he ends up dying right after this trust. But when you look at the big picture and you see all the different levels that we're dealing with here, then you're skeptical of this theory as well, because as much of a narcissist as Jeffrey Epstein was, and the fact that his lawyers thought that they might be able to catch a little love on the appeal, it just doesn't add up to me personally that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Again, I don't have any evidence that you folks haven't seen, right? So it's all up to our opinion at this point and for us to speculate, because there is no hard evidence that proves that he killed himself at this point. Among the very significant facts are that Epstein initially attempted suicide in the Metropolitan Correction Center just one day after being served with a civil complaint seeking punitive damages, says papers filed in Manhattan federal court. Or he was assaulted by Tartaglione, and it was his handlers who put all of this into motion. Look, we know that he spent a bunch of time with lawyers in that jail cell, and there was an unnamed woman who came to see him before he died. Who was that woman? Who did she represent? Why was she there? How many of these people have ties to the mega group? And these are just the questions that I ask, and of course, we're not given any answers whatsoever. We're left to figure it out for ourselves. So, you want to leave a little bit of something going on in the vacuum? We'll step up. We'll step into the void. That means all of us out there. We'll step up and we'll do our research and we'll track things down and we'll do your job for you, because obviously Barr and the Justice Department are incapable of doing correct work. And thereafter, Epstein executed a last will and testament, directing how his vast assets would be devised. Just 2 days later, Epstein committed suicide, the papers add, allegedly. And again, in my opinion, it's very, very likely, or possible, I should say, that his handlers, the disgustoids over at the mega group, put all of this into motion as well. And I know that seems like, crazy almost, right? And if it was any other situation, I would never even give something like that any thought, to be honest with you, because it's usually the most likely situation is look, the most likely answer is usually what occurred, right? And if it was most people, I'd be like, yeah, the guy killed himself, and that's that. But this is a whole different ballgame. Jeffrey Epstein was not the kind of guy that was going to take his own life, and I've heard that from several people that knew him intimately. And I just find it hard to believe that he ended up killing himself. But look, you can definitely look at it from the way that this is being presented. This is definitely plausible as well. Again, I'm not saying for sure that he killed himself or that he didn't kill himself. I, like you, do not know. All we have is the evidence that we've been provided, and then that leads us to our opinions. And I know the prevailing opinion is that he did not kill himself. Epstein also studied the law and likely knew he could potentially escape paying those he harmed if he committed suicide, Doe's lawyer argued in the filing. Or, again, another thought perhaps, maybe the people that are in charge of his estate knew that this was going to occur, that this could go this way, and Epstein was being used again by the people that were running him, and they want their money back. So they had him set up these wills before he passed away. Again, folks, this is speculation on my part. They had him set up these wills and all these different trusts before he died, and they told him, look, you're no longer protected by us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing leads to another, and before you know it, Epstein's dead. So look, it's all speculation. Again, like I said, it could be her lawyers could be 100% correct in this situation, and this could just be one of those things where Epstein was just so ahead of the situation, meaning he knew he was going down. He knew that he had been jettisoned by his handlers. He knew that he was no longer being protected, so he said, screw it, I'm going to burn the whole entire thing down right now. I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to write all of these wills and these trusts and write them in a way that makes it almost impossible for the survivors of my crimes to get paid out, and then I'm going to kill myself. F everybody. Is that possible? Absolutely possible, folks. Absolutely possible. It would stand to reason that he no doubt knew about the law in New York generally prohibiting punitive damages against an estate, and in this situation where he calculated attempting to shield his wealth from victims, he decided the best way to do so was take his own life, the filing states. Doe argued in the filing that it would be perverse public policy to allow Epstein's estate to escape paying the money she's seeking because of his suicide. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, look, if there's some sort of weird-ass New York law that makes it almost impossible to go after the estate of somebody who has killed themselves, I think that's kind of a ridiculous law, right? And where are all of these hard-charging New York politicians who care about your wealth so much, your health so much? Where are all of them stepping up to change this law? The law was put on the books, and the law can be taken off of the books. It just, we need politicians who are not playing games, politicians that really care. And the state of New York, there are not many of those. Doe's lawyers made the argument in response to a motion to dismiss her claim by Epstein's lawyers. His lawyers argued punitive damages could not be recouped from Doe from Epstein's estate because New York law disallows it. Not because she wasn't assaulted by Epstein, not because she was not abused by Epstein, not because she was not taken advantage of by Epstein. Oh, no, none of that. We're not saying that didn't happen, but the New York law disallows her from getting any dough from his estate because, the law denies it. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and the New York state legislature should be getting together as we speak to change that law. But because Epstein likely committed suicide specifically to escape paying his victims, the law should not apply to his estate, Doe's lawyers argued. And that seems fair, right? If it's deemed that he committed suicide to escape paying this off, then the court should rule in Doe's favor. But we all see how the New York court system goes. We all see how, Preska conducts herself. We all see what goes on in New York. So I have very little faith in the state of New York to administer justice in this case. Separately, the $577 million estate has formed a victims' compensation fund to deal with the torrent of accusers seeking money. An attorney for Epstein's estate did not immediately return a request for comment. Of course they didn't. They're way too busy trying to, stuff money in their pockets on their way out the door. In her original complaint, Doe claimed she was 17 when she first met Epstein in 2007 and spent the next 7 years traveling to his homes in Manhattan, Florida, and the U.S. Virgin Islands for the sole purpose of having sex with him. Surprised that she wasn't in New Mexico as well. He seems to have loved taking these girls to New Mexico, his little private bolt hole in the middle of the desert. So it kind of shocks me that this young lady, Katlyn Doe, was not brought there as well. In 2013, Epstein coerced her into marrying one of his female recruiters, Associate 3, so that the recruiter can obtain legal status to remain in the country to work for him, the suit said. And we've heard a bunch of stories like that, right? And I have some ideas on who this might be, but since she is only going by Katlyn Doe here in the report, I'm not going to delve too deep into her identity. But the fact of the matter is this. This is something we've seen with Jeffrey Epstein and his crew a lot. And that's, these arranged marriages, this transhumanism, the whole thing of seeding the world from Zorro Ranch with his own seed. These are weird people. And it's certainly not, above them to make one of these young ladies who have been caught up in their trafficking ring marry one of their associates in some sort of sick, disturbed, arranged forced marriage, and with the whole entire idea being for the associate to skip through the legal system and get themselves some sort of legal status in America so that they could work for him. Basically, slave labor is what was going on. You're going to marry this recruiter so that she can stay in the country, so she can keep recruiting and bringing me more girls, and now you're all slaves. Now you're all my slaves because I own you all one way or the other. And that was what it was about with this guy as well. Don't get it. Do not think that it wasn't, folks. It was a lot for Jeffrey Epstein. It was a lot about power and consolidating power. And in his sick mind, he thought that he was truly going to be able to get away with this forever. He thought that he would be able to seed the world from his ranch. He really believed all of this, folks. That is how caught up in his delusions of grandeur he was. He was a sick, disturbed man. And anybody that was around him, that heard him talk about the things that he talked about, the things he was interested in, and thought that, this is normal, well, I have to say, you might be a sick, disturbed son of a bitch as well if you thought that when you met him. Because I don't understand how anybody can look at anybody else with a straight face and say they had no idea what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. If the lady working the front desk at my hotel in Santa Fe knew what Jeffrey Epstein was up to, there is zero doubt in my mind that the rest of them, the whole lot, every single one of his buddies, knew exactly what he was up to. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. If you would like to help support the podcast and you enjoy my work, you can do that by clicking on the GoFundMe link inside of the description box. I will be back later on tonight with the Daily Drop like usual, and I hope that everybody enjoys their Friday afternoon, morning, and that, boy, I'll tell you what, I really hope that we get some more breaking information today, some breaking news on this story, something to drop. A lot of times I'll try and bury things on Fridays, so I'm always scouring the wire to see what they drop on a Friday to try and bury. So hopefully we get something nice today, some more a very informative bit of information, hopefully. But either way, we'll be back tonight and we'll be ready to go with the daily drop.